All of us need a change from time to time from our routines, and our houseplants are certainly no exception. When the season begins to change with longer days and milder temperatures, it's the perfect opportunity for our houseplants to enjoy a change of scenery by moving them outdoors. The time of year to do this is when the outside temperatures are close to the temperature inside your home. Now, a good time to make this shift is when the temperature is, say, between 65 and 68 degrees. You don't want to throw them into shock with a drastic change. Whether you have fine-textured houseplants like this asparagus fern or something broadleaf like this prayer plant, you'll want to be careful where you place them. You see, if the sun is too bright and intense, it can cause the leaves to burn or blister. The shade of a porch where they get indirect light can be ideal, or under the shade of a large tree where filtered, dappled light is available will also work. Placing them under a tree will also give the plants the added benefit of being watered by an occasional summer rain. Before I move them to their new temporary home, I inspect each plant for pests, repot any of those that have outgrown their containers into larger accommodation, and I fertilize, as now they're in an active growth phase and can use the food. From the garden, I'm Alan Smith. Keeping certain houseplants in good shape during the fall and winter can be quite a challenge. Some of the most difficult for me are the ferns. For instance, this big, beautiful Boston fern is one of my favorites. I love its delicate, fresh appearance, but whenever I bring it inside, it inevitably begins to shed these tiny little leaves. Now, there's really not much I can do about this. It's basically just the nature of the plant, whether it's inside or out. But what I can do is give it a good shake periodically and try to remove as many of the dead fronds as I can. Now, putting down some newspaper will always help make this process a little tidier. I found that no matter what houseplant you're dealing with, you'll have more success if the conditions inside can closely match the conditions it had become accustomed to outside. Most ferns need moderate indirect light indoors. Never put them directly in a south or west facing window. The heat and intense light will scorch the leaves. When it comes to moisture, watering is really no big deal, but humidity is another issue. This time of year when the air in our homes is becoming drier, this can present a problem to the plant. One of the simplest ways to increase the moisture in the air immediately around the plant is to place the container on a saucer of gravel and water. Just make sure the bottom of the container is above the water line. Of course, if taking care of something this delicate seems like too much trouble for you, but you'd still like a fern, you might give one of these tough little bird's nest ferns a try. From the garden, I'm Alan Smith. Some houseplants are the tropical relatives of plants we commonly see growing outdoors, like this yucca. Yuccas project an almost fierce, if not unfriendly, air about them because of these long pointed leaves. However, they can add a strong architectural look to the garden or home. And when they bloom, the flowers look like large candelabras covered in creamy white bells. Now, if you use one of these as a houseplant, you'll find that the yucca is a bit more temperamental than those growing outdoors. I suppose the main point to remember, if you want them to stay full and healthy like these, is to go easy on the water. You see, less is better, not more. You see, too much water will cause the stalks to rot and the tips of the leaves to turn brown with a yellow halo. As a houseplant, you can find yucca growing two different ways. The first is a cluster of foliage like this growing close to the soil. The other is this same cluster of foliage on top of a cane or stalk, as you can see here. If you grow them on a stalk, it's helpful to know that if the leaves begin to look spotted and the whole head of the plant looks worn and ragged, you can just cut off the old top, finding a suitable place along the stalk, and new fresh foliage will appear. Now, if you want to keep a yucca vibrant and healthy, you should always give it full direct sunlight, so be sure you don't put it in a dark corner. While these leaves appear sharp and dangerous, they're actually softer than you might think, but it's always a good idea to use caution around small children and pets. From the garden, I'm Alan Smith. Plants are a lot like us in that they need to be fed regularly. Of course, some require more food than others. And while there are hundreds of different houseplants out there for us to choose from, each with its own cultural requirements, when it comes to fertilizer, many of them respond the same. As you can see, there are a lot of houseplant fertilizers available, and the choices can be confusing, but it's actually very simple when you consider that all of these have basically the same ingredients: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, trace elements, and some minerals. What's different in them is that they have different proportions and concentrations, all depending on the plant you're going to feed. For houseplants that are grown strictly for their foliage, like ficus or Dieffenbachia, a basic all-purpose blend is fine. But for flowering houseplants like orchids or African violets, you may want one with less nitrogen and more phosphorus to create more bloom. Most of these blends need to be applied every 2 weeks or so, but not all year long. You see, when houseplants go into a state of dormancy or a slower growth phase during the fall and winter, they don't need as much fertilizer. But when things pick up again in the spring, say from spring until the next fall, they really need to have plenty of food to draw on. If your plants have brown tips on the leaves or entire leaves are dropping, you may be over-fertilizing. This is called fertilizer burn. And I see this a lot because most of us are inclined to kill our plants with kindness. From the garden, I'm Alan Smith. You know, I have to say, I love gardens of all sizes. Even gardens that you can put in a jar this size. You know, when I was a kid, I always loved making terrariums. I'd put them in a mason jar, a fish bowl, even an aquarium, and I'd plant all sorts of plants in there. Some of them would work and some of them wouldn't. I'd put sticks and moss and rocks and even little plastic dinosaurs and things like that. I think terrariums can add a bit of nature in the house in a very beautiful and stylish way. So what I thought I would do today is talk just a little bit about the history of the terrarium and then some ideas on how you can create one for your own garden home. What's interesting about the terrarium is they really came about in the 19th century. One of the earliest examples is one called the Wardian case. This guy by the name of Ward in England developed a glass box, and it was actually used in the beginning to transport tropical plants from all the various extensions of England's colonies back to Victorian England. And then from there, the terrarium became all the craze. Now, what I'm doing today is starting with some rather large jars. I find that those are a lot easier to work with. The larger the mouth of the jar, the easier it is to get your hands in. Now, you can make terrariums with smaller mouth jars, but you'll need some little tools. Sticks, chopsticks work very well, tweezers, whatever you need to get down there to plant the plants and get everything in place. Now, I like to use lots of different shapes. You can see how I've displayed these on the end of the work table here. They're all roughly about the same size, but I have them elevated using these shiny cake plates. It's nice because it reflects the light and the color of the plants and so forth. These can be great looking in a kitchen or even a bathroom. Now, when you create a terrarium, the main thing to keep in mind is just have some fun. It should be a creative expression. All you need are a few basic elements. We've already established you need a container, of course, and then at the bottom of it, you're going to put a gravel base, and those can be in any sort of shape and form. Just look at some of these big black ones, white ones, and these mixed ones here. And then after that, you're going to add a layer of good potting soil. Okay? Now, why don't we get started? What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this gravel as the gravel for the base. Makes a lot of racket, doesn't it? So all I'm doing is I'm putting about a ½ inch gravel in here, and now I'm going to apply a layer of this potting soil like this. Just use a good high quality potting soil that has some nutrient in it, because typically you don't fertilize these terrariums until about a year. And one tip to keep in mind to keep the soil off the edge of the glass is just take a spray bottle like this, and you can rinse the inside of the jar. And after I plant my plants, I'll come back and give it another rinse to make sure again that there's no soil on the edge. Okay, now here's where you can really get creative. It's about choosing the plants, and there's a wide range of house plants you can use. What I like to go for are those that have a tropical quality. You don't want to use plants that love arid conditions like many of the sedums and cacti and so forth. It's a different kind of terrarium. These are going to be covered with glass, and you're going to be creating constant humidity within this jar. So stay away from those. I try to select plants that have small leaves and aren't particularly vigorous growers. Plants like some of the needlepoint ivies, the little tiny button fern, or strawberry begonia. I like peperomias as well as the Fittonias, funny name, but it's also called a nerve plant, called that because of the veining that you see. The white ones are striking, and there's a beautiful pink one that you can see that I've used in a number of these terrariums. And I've also coordinated the colors here, you can see. I've used the same plant palette in all 5 of these terrariums because I like showcasing them all together so they hang together with their own color theme. Now, other ways that you can apply your own personal style to these is to think about the ground cover within the terrarium. I like to use mosses or even another kind of gravel to create a pattern. And then you can apply sticks or interesting stones and even lichens and other kinds of mosses. Now, a couple of tips you need to keep in mind. Placing this in the house is very important. You never want to put a terrarium in full hot sun because the temperature can really heat up in a hurry inside this jar. So keep it away from direct light. When it comes to water, what I do is make sure that the soil is moist and there might be just a little bit of water down here in the gravel. Put the lid on it and watch it for several days. If you get a lot of humidity and it begins to bead up, you may want to pull the jar lid over just to the side and let some of that water evaporate out. You just kind of have to monitor it for about a week to 10 days, and then you can keep the lid on it for months and months without any care at all. And what a beautiful way to bring a bit of the garden into your home.